All right, guys, welcome back. We are here with another episode of Thinking Out Loud. Excited for this one today. We have Lisa Slaa in the studio. So, Lisa, talk a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? What do you do?
Boy, that's a wide open question. So, from Sioux Falls originally, graduated from Lenox High School and USD, Go Yotes. And then had a varied career in sales over the years and started my own leadership development company about 11 years ago, and I've been doing that ever since, working with businesses and individuals in our local tri-state area here, kind of, helping them get better and improve.
Awesome. I love it. How long have you been doing that?
11 years.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, let's get into a little bit more. When you talk about leadership development, we're practitioners as well, and doing that, you realize that how people define that can be really vast.
Yes.
So
Yes.
when you talk about leadership development, how do you put it in your verbiage?
So, truly development versus training, where we work with companies longer term, 6 months and beyond. And I have a franchise called LMI, Leadership Management International, and we have a whole curriculum of programs. So it is the delivery style is such that we get together every other week, meet for 2 hours. There's homework and there is learning and development on the job in between those 2 weeks. And then we come back together and talk about how things went. So, I mean, you guys do the same thing, so you understand this, but you don't ever change behavior until you change beliefs and attitudes. So
Right.
we really focus on why are they doing what they're doing? Why do they believe what they believe? Why do they feel about their teams the way they do? And until you get to that meet, you're never going to get anybody to change behavior.
It was interesting. We were at a meeting for what we're about to talk about here in just a little bit, and Lisa got to talking a little bit beforehand. And there was a couple things that you said where I was like, that's what, and it was one of those things where when you're in the room with somebody that feels the way that you do about things, how just important that is to have that common language and then that tone. And it's a different language because I've been in the room with a lot of people who say they do leadership development. I've been in the room with a lot of people who say they do culture or whatever. And so many of those people really are talking about fixing them and making them okay with their situation versus how they address the situation, that make it about tactics and hacks and tricks and tips instead of, what really that person believes and how they see themselves, how they feel and where they're at. Can you talk a little bit about that, about some of the misnomers around leadership and how people tend to think about it?
Well, I guess the first thing that comes to mind, because the top two things that come up with every company I work with are communication and really delegation and those types of areas. And the belief that if you teach your team to do everything that you can do, then what's your value going to be? And getting them to change that mindset that it doesn't have to be you doing it all, and you look better if your team can all do it. And then you can move on to bigger and better things. And then you can go to your boss and have them delegate additional things to you. So that's one of the biggest mindsets that we work on changing, is why it's so important to empower your people.
Yeah.
Well, you get more done.
Yeah.
Right? Because even if you think that you're going to do better at something, let's say
Absolutely.
even if I think I could do a 90 when you're doing a 75,
Yes.
you're still doing a 75 I'm extending my hours now. I'm extending my time. And
Absolutely.
it's that kind of that self, like I'm hoarding knowledge or hoarding this information. And
not only are you hoarding knowledge, we're so in tune with what's the value of our people? What is our dollar per minute and our dollar per hour cost? And if you are not engaging and empowering your people and teaching them to do these things, how much money are you wasting by, number one, you doing things that aren't your high payoff activities, but not allowing them to do things?
And how does one get to a 90% if they don't actually get to participate in that activity?
Right.
And we say, studies suggest that a happy employee is going to produce 10% more, an unhappy employee is going to produce 12% less. So we're talking about a difference of upwards of 22%. Most businesses, particularly the ones that we're likely to deal with, don't even have a profit margin of 22%, right? So a lot of businesses don't even have those really huge, healthy profit margins where you can afford to leave all of that production on the table. You just can't, not to mention, at least in our experience, the key that we're normally dealing with, the human element we normally have to address is confidence. Yeah. And I'm not talking about frontline people. I'm talking about from the person who changes the trash liner to the CEO, the confidence, the imposter syndrome, all of those type of things is what we have to deal with. So how do you combat some of those things?
Well, as you're talking, it just made me think of a couple other things too. And being vulnerable, that's so huge. Having them be able to and look forward to sharing what have their failures been with their teams, and what happened with them, and how did they address it, and how did they overcome it. And that's so powerful to share that with your teams, because then they know, number one, how you feel about it. They're not going to get their butt chewed if they try something and it doesn't work out. But they also know that it's normal. It's part of the learning process.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome. And the other big thing I always hear about is feedback and getting personal. We can't be personal. This is work. We can't get into their personal life. And it's like, wow, that's such old style of leadership, because now the more you know about your employees and the more you can be personal with them and let them know they're a person, not just a number, the more loyal they're going to be, the more they're going to work for you. That feedback is so important.
Well, and it's just not a thing. I mean, you could want it to be a thing, but leave it at the door is not actually a thing. Like, no one actually leaves it at the door.
We're humans. We're not robots. We can't compartmentalize. We can't turn off.
Nor should you. I mean, because at the end of the day, what would that mean if people did actually compartmentalize it, right? What if you didn't think about your family, your pursuits, your passions, your community, the things you love while you were at work? Considering the average person is going to spend 80% of their adult life working.
Yep.
And anywhere from 40 to 75% of their waking hours working, thinking about work, going to work, preparing for work, talking about work, decompressing from work. If all of that time you were void of the things that you loved, what would your life be like? That's just ridiculous. It's not a realistic thing.
I even think about it in the inverse, and a lot of times in organizations, like in positions, do I want my people not thinking about what they're doing here as soon as they clock out? Like, you know what I mean? Like, especially if you're in some sort of a technical field or some sort of professional field. Like, I've been in sales and biz dev for a long time. I was thinking about work all the time, right? And it's because I loved what I was doing. How can I improve it? How can I improve myself? What am I doing to get better at these things outside of work? I don't want people checking in and out the same way that I don't. If I'm asking you to leave your stuff at the door, then I'm also in the inverse asking you is to leave work at the door when you exit, and that's not realistic. No.
Well, and I'm sure you guys have seen the same thing. But as people go through these processes, they find that they get as much personally out of the development process as they do professionally, because it all intertwines. And the better you are in this area of life, the better you are over here.
For sure. And real education happens through experiences. When we talk about the eureka, when the light bulb goes off, when that thing clicks, you can't plan that. You can't manufacture that. You could try to create an environment for that, but that happens how it happens. And because it happens through experiences, when that person leaves work and they go out to dinner, they might see that thing or have that thing click that changes your whole customer experience at work, right? And so we don't want to cut people off from the ability of doing that. That's why for us, our language is more work-life integration than it is work-life balance, because we just feel like that suggests that you have to take one from the other in order to kind of do this thing all the time, versus being able to say, how can these things work in conjunction with each other? I want to be present in whatever it is that I'm doing.
Right.
But the things that I've come up with that have added the most value to this organization have almost never been here.
Right.
Right. There's like, I got it. Right. And I have to be available for that. So when we talk about that, and as we start to get in to talk about what we're here to talk about, which is all of these wonderful courses that are happening at USD Community College, and what is happening with their professional development, we have an opportunity here for a lot of small businesses who normally would struggle to get the type of content from practitioners like you, to be able to have a wide range of topics that can help them really develop the people in their business. And you are doing multiple courses. And as we just talk about it, why don't you talk about a little bit about your relationship to USDCC and kind of how you came into that conversation, whether you were recruited by Linda or whatever. And then why don't you tell us a little bit about the courses you're going to be teaching.
Okay. So that was a stacked question.
It was.
So the first part of your question was how I came about getting into this. Okay. So Linda and I have crossed paths several times over the years. Both of our fathers were developers and builders, so I've known her for many years through the Home Builders Association. And when she first moved back to town from Minnesota, we got reconnected. And then she actually, this is funny, So the franchise that I own, she actually went through one of our programs with a different franchisee before I was even a blip on the map, 25 years ago. So she was familiar with our programs and what we do. And then we've just kept in contact and share the leadership development passion together. And so we've always kept in contact around that. And she was looking for some instructors for this. And we got together and she told me what was available. And that's kind of what we settled on. So the 2 classes that I'm doing are one on extreme productivity and then one on the DISC. So the extreme productivity one, and I totally agree with you. I hate the term work-life balance because it makes people, and I'm just speaking from my point of view. I mean, maybe you men feel the same way, but I think for women in particular, it makes women feel like they should have this balance and be able to bring home the bacon and cook it up in a pan and do it all. And really, work-life balance doesn't mean you're balanced every day or even every week.
Right.
It just means that you have balance over a continuum. Maybe you have, 2 weeks where you're crazy busy with work, but then you spend some time with your family and go on a quality weekend getaway or, for yourself, exercising, whatever. So in extreme productivity, we really focus on quality of life and how you can start saying no, how you identify your high payoff activities, how you get clear on what it is that you want out of life, because we all know, how do you know what to say no to if you haven't even decided what your goals are, if you haven't even decided where you want to go? So even though it comes down to time management and not really time management, but more personal management, in the end, it has to start with knowing who you are and knowing what you want out of life so you can make those decisions and be more productive. Yeah. So we're going to cover a lot of stuff in that class. It's going to be a full day. They'll get a lot of time. They'll get some time throughout the day to reflect and to write some goals and to think about where they want to go, both personally and professionally. Yeah. I'm also a big believer that if you have employees that don't have personal goals and you are not encouraging them to make personal goals, you're really missing the mark. Yeah. Because we don't go to work every day because we love to go to work every day. We go to work every day to get the money to do the things that we want to do.
And that's the other thing. It's about what it does for you. Yes. It's not just the money. It's what the money actually allows you to do outside of work. So who are you beyond that?
Exactly.
And, you ask people why they work, it's fairly simple answers. Most of the time, it's I like helping people. Yeah. Or I've got the boat and the house and, I've got this lifestyle I need to pay for. But why this? Yeah. Why do this particular version of work? So
in one of our lessons in our supervisory development class, they have to go back and fill out a motivation plan with all of their employees. And one of their questions is just a simple, what motivates you? And the core answer to that from almost everyone is money. Money motivates me. Mm-hmm. But when they dig down, it's never money. It's never money. It's all this stuff. Yeah. It's the vacation they want to take with their kids. Never money. It's all this stuff.
And it's interesting. We've had such this, I think, an aversion to talking about emotions or being vulnerable at work. Right. And we have clients that are in very hard-nosed, technical, blue-collar spaces, right? Like construction management. And we break it down with these guys, and we're like, how many of those problems are emotional on the job site? How many of those issues? How many of you guys would say that your guys... It's insane.
It's incredible. Like the toughest, most burly guy, the
biggest,
the most emotional. And, that's the thing. Like, in particular...
Here's a result from search.
Now, come on. What are we doing right now? Now, listen.
That's one of the things that we talk about in our time management class.
This is amateur hour. I want to just notice that. This is the amateur hour. Google went rogue on me.
This might be a good opportunity to jump to break.
Right. Awesome. So, took a quick little breather because I'm over here messing up stuff, but no big deal. Okay, no big deal. We're having fun. So we were talking about what's happening here at USD Community College here in Sioux Falls, which was formerly the University Center. So there was a changeover from that, but there's also some elements that have been added, which is the professional development piece of it. And so there's a whole host of different courses being taught by real practitioners. And this is something that I'm really excited about because we talked about this a few times, which is there is a difference, right? There is something about the traditional educational model, which is very valuable, right? But you're generally dealing with people who've had to suspend their professional life for their professorial life. And there is something to be said for dealing with people who are active practitioners. Like, the people who are on this list are people who are doing this stuff now, who are into it. And I think there's a different value for that in terms of how to make it applicable, right? How is it practical? How is it something that somebody could take and they could put into practice immediately? So why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because even some of the exercises you've already mentioned, I can automatically see, man, that would be a valuable exercise for somebody to go through. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
So, right, putting it into practice, it is real world. Just like you guys, we've worked with tons of different companies, so we get lots of perspectives from different people. We hear what works, we hear what doesn't. But getting down to really the nuts and bolts of things and helping them understand. On my session on communication, which I know is very different from what you guys are doing, I think they'll complement each other well. But we're going to be using the DISC as a base for it. And actually, it'll be a great basis, I think, for a lot of these classes, because once you start understanding your behavior style and why you show up the way you do and why you're perceived the way you do, you start understanding why you handle conflict the way you do, why you critically think the way you do, why you communicate the way that you do. So even in my first session, you find out why you manage yourself the way you do, why some things are easier for you. So I think that'll be a great kind of pull together class. And we are using the DISC, which, you've got DISC, Myers-Briggs, you've got all kinds of assessments out there that basically are going to tell you the same bottom line information. They're all awesome, and they're not the end all be all, and they're not 100%, but they're pretty darn on target if you've ever taken them before.
They're pretty good.
Yes. And the reason I like the DISC and the reason we're using the DISC is it's just extremely easy to understand. You don't have to be a brain surgeon. It's got the colors. It's pretty easy, the verbiage that we use. So I think people will be able to get a good grasp on it in the one day and be able to read other people as well, family members.
Well, that's one of the things we talk about is, having access to those things is great to have those insights, but it's also important to be able to have a thought process about what you're going to do with that information, right? Yep. How do you weaponize it? How do you make it something that you can use? Yep. We've been into a lot of different situations with clients where we go in there and we see their strength finders, we see their top 5 or whatever it is, or those things up. And then we ask them, like, so what do you guys do with this? And then it's always kind of like, we hang it, so people can see it. But thinking about how you can activate that, really understanding how to use those skills.
Yeah, and they've already taken that first step. So now it's like, okay, you've got that info. Do something with it.
Right.
How do you
Right. And I think that is so important. I think the two things that sometimes get missed or interpreted wrong when companies bring somebody in to do assessments is, number one, they don't carry it forward and they don't apply it because, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's too hard for them to do it at their level or whatever the reason might be. But like with the DISC, it's very easy to understand. And the other thing that I hear often is that people have come in the past and they've felt like there's a right and a wrong, like they're being judged, like they're putting you in a box. And that is not what it's about at all. There is no right or wrong. We need some of everybody to make the world go round. It's all about learning who you are and then learning how to be the best you and work with that. Because if you're a real dominant personality, behavior style, you need to understand how to work with these more steady Eddie team player people that you work with. Your language and directness is going to turn them off and it's not going to motivate them. So there's a lot of things to be learned from that, and it definitely is not about pigeonholing people or trying to make them something that they're not.
One of the things that maybe not everybody caught, but as you mentioned, we're both doing, kind of sessions on communication. And this is one of the things that I think is the most impressive about this. And again, if you haven't gone online and you haven't looked at the professional development courses that are being offered, some are coming up relatively quickly. So you're going to want to make sure you get into those as soon as you can. But if you go in there and look at it, what you're going to see is you're going to see something that rarely doesn't happen, that rarely happens, which is these different types of courses feeding into other courses, right? For people to be able to get different perspectives and to be able to have one course that's going to support another course that's coming immediately after that. A lot of times, even in a traditional education environment, it's not necessarily the case, right? Where one really feeds into the other. And I think what's so cool about this is that if you're a small business and you don't have the infrastructure, you don't have you know, the dollars that it takes to build something like this internally. You're not just sending someone to a course. You can put someone in a curriculum. And I think that is very different. So to be able to have the benefit of saying, I can provide this for you at a reasonable cost as an organization, to be able to do that and give your people a growth pattern, which, by the way, is one of the primary factors of retention, is the growth path that your people are on. So if they're learning still, if they're growing still, if they're developing still, they'll usually stick around. So if you're having issues with workforce, one of the greatest ways to help, and remember, recruitment happens by way of retention, because you can't hire who you want if you're busy hiring who you need. And so if we have a situation where you can retain people through keeping them engaged, it's going to make it easier for you to fight that battle. So that's my plug.
Absolutely. And you know, we don't build companies. We build people, and our people build our companies. So that's just the most important. It's just the most important aspect that we have in our whole entire company.
You know what I like about you, Lisa?
What?
Is how you aggressively hit the table, because this is something that I do.
Yeah,
I do this
we have
all the time.
You know, everybody's always told me that I talk a lot with my hands, but I didn't realize how bad it was until I saw myself on that USD clip.
It's not even how bad, it's how good.
Exactly.
Like, people need to talk with their hands. I need the whole thing. First of all, I'm trying to keep my chain from hitting the table a gazillion times. But I am a table slapper, and it's funny because I'll be talking to people, and I watch when I'm... and they can't help but like kind of follow my hands. Like I'm doing a 3-card Monty or something.
We have still frames from all of our like CultureCon and all of our speaking engagements, and like there's random hand placements.
Gestures.
And like I've done the same thing, because when I did sales training at my last organization, I would always pop. And
I have to work the hands, and so whenever somebody is active with the hands, that's a kindred spirit to me, because
there you go.
You just have to.
Yes.
And because again, it's passion. You have to communicate. When somebody is sitting there and they're just talking to me, and then I don't want to talk to that person at all. Like I'm done with that conversation, because I'm gonna fall asleep on you first of all, and it's just I can't be in that. Which is a prime example of why people want to go to courses with people that have some energy and some movement. Because when you're in a room with somebody for 6 to 8 hours.
Well, I can guarantee you that we'll have fun in the classes that I'm doing, and we'll laugh, because fun is one of my top 3 values. And if I'm not having fun, I don't want to do it.
Boom.
So, but can I say one more thing?
You can
about
say
this?
several more things.
Well, the one other thing that I wanted to say, where I just love this whole process and how it fits in with what we do outside of here, is that I think they're great feeders into what we do. They give people a chance that, well, if they're maybe on the fence of, do I need help with this or don't I, they can go do something little and see, and then go into a bigger program. Or where I really like it, and you kind of alluded to this out there, is after they go through one of our longer programs, it doesn't just stop. They need to refreshers. They need to keep learning and growing. And this is so awesome for that, for them to be able to go back and take a class here and there. And
that's such a great point. And that's part of the reason why we did this with the podcast, and that's part of the reason why we do CultureCon, and that's part of the reason why we do most of what we do, which is, number one, we want to have some real connection to our community. We want to elevate our practitioners. We want to let people know that the amazing, intelligent, brilliant people that we have in this community. And a lot of times when we get tempted just from, profit in your own town, we get tempted from bringing people from elsewhere to come in and do a message. The problem with that sometimes is that person is going back to do whatever it is that they're doing.
Yeah.
And getting access to that person is either expensive or something where there's a time limitation. Being able to be taught by people who are doing quality content that is as good as anywhere in the world, but is available to you, to where you can have some type of continuum, where you can make sure you keep learning and growing, something that anybody who's serious about this work understands you're going to have to do. Listen, if you think that you're going to have somebody come in, I don't care who you get. I don't care if it's Tony Robbins. I don't care if it's Les Brown. I don't care who it is. There is no one who is walking into your building for 2 hours that's going to turn around your whole situation. No. It's not a thing.
It just isn't.
It just is not a thing.
My favorite question to ask somebody when they're asking me about, what the options are and if I can just come in for 2 hours and do something like that. My favorite question is, do you actually want to develop your people, or do you just want to check a box? Is this an HR thing? You just want to check a box?
Hello.
And okay.
Tell the truth.
Yeah.
We're telling the truth today, ladies and gentlemen.
But it's serious though. It makes them think.
Right. What do you think? Even when we do stuff, so sometimes we'll do things quarterly, and it's like, listen, you got to understand, it's like 480 hours to 4.
Right. Right.
Right. It's like, we're good. We're not that good. Like, I mean, like, nobody's that good. So what is your plan? So I think this is one of the messages that we can kind of button this up on. Number one, development. Like you said, we build the people build the business. So we got to develop them. This is a great opportunity. And the reason why I'm so excited about this is that this is not just about what it means for us or what it means about that company. It's about what it means as a community, that there are resources to help you develop people. There are a lot of communities that don't think like that are not saying, hey, how do we create resources to make sure that everyone has an opportunity, an affordable, realistic opportunity to develop their people so they can be successful in their organizations. Yep. And here we have that. And so I really encourage you to check all that out. The links will be listed.
Yeah, we'll have the links in the descriptions for all these videos. If they're watching on YouTube or listening on a podcast, we'll have the links. But it's usd.edu/CPD, Center for Professional Development, if you're interested. So
yes, there are exactly 0 people who are going to write that down. But we will have the links available.
Yeah.
For those of you that do not, we thank you. We appreciate you coming to hang out with us.
Fun.
We're going to need you to come and hang out with us some more.
You can put the link on there to my website too if you want. PrecisionLeadershipGroup.com.
On there, and you heard that one. That one might be easier to put in, but we will have that link as well. Make sure you get up with her. And listen, guys, get in here and get into these courses. I would encourage you to look at having all of them as a curriculum that you can look at. But even if it's a situation where you have some things set up, but you don't have all of this and you want to do something supplementary, go ahead and get into that. But in any event, this is a great opportunity. We're so thankful for you swinging by, and we will talk to you next time here on Thinking Out Loud.
Yeah, that's
Thank
right.
You.
All right.